My name is Aaron Burciaga. I come from Washington, D.C. I just spent the last year, though, working in Toronto. So, one, I learned how to say Toronto. And then two, I also enjoyed working for one of your largest retailers here in Canada, helping them with a $750 million transformation project in their logistics analytics. So, matter of fact, what I'm going to talk about relates directly back to that project. So why don't we go ahead and snap along to the next slide, and I'm actually going to invite you to ignore me right now. Seriously, ignore me. I'm going to ignore you. If you can turn on your cell phones and go to am.informs.org, that's what I'm going to do right at this moment. I actually have it saved to my home screen. And if I were to click there, it's going to pop open real time. It's made modular for your cell phones, for your tablets, for your PCs and your laptops, for you and your clients to click right in and see, oh, you answer simple questions about your organization, and then we'll do the math. Let me say, get started, top left button. Then it says sign in because I already have a profile, or it says I want to create a profile, or I don't want to create a profile at this time. We're obviously capturing data, so for your interest of first perusing the problem, checking out TurboTax before you buy, click on try it as a guest. It'll take you to a screen and it'll say select your organization. And I'll say in my arts and entertainment, construction, healthcare, manufacturing, I'll figure law enforcement, and then start my assessment, and away it takes me. So if you wish to ignore me the rest of this lecture and complete your very first assessment, you're welcome to do that. If you want to bookmark it and save it to your home screen so that you can do that afterwards, I encourage you to do so. The reason why I say that is I can personally attest to the fact that it has been valuable to two of my clients. It has been valuable to another handful of clients, and I'm going to share with you 4 quick war stories. The very first organization that benefited from the Informs Analytics Maturity Model was who I formerly worked for before jumping into the commercial sector. 4 years ago, I ran this for the 3-star of the Marine Corps in charge of all logistics and infrastructure. His name, Headquarters Marine Corps, Pentagon. Led this assessment for him, went back to the general and said, sir, these are the gaps. This is what we're missing, and this is where we can invest in a policy letter which costs you nothing to improve your analytics maturity, or this is where we need to go buy software. So help me prioritize and sequence next actions for him to mature the people, the organization, the skills, the software that we needed to have a fully functioning analytics operation there in the Pentagon. A similar exercise was done for the Army by a colleague of mine. As a matter of fact, the former chair of the CAP, he ran this for the Army's analytics activity as well, showed them the capabilities and gaps that they had, and helped them prioritize and sequence next actions. A friend of mine took this to the Brazilian Stock Exchange, and there he ran it for them. And in his company, they were able to charge the Brazilian Stock Exchange $80,000, very small company, with being able to run the analytics maturity model for them, provide them the diagnostics and the reports out, and then guide them in how they were going to develop the next tools and capabilities they needed. And then last but not least, the other war story that I have for you was right here in Canada. About 7 months ago, I led a client through a workshop. And on that 2-day workshop, the analytics maturity model characterized both mornings. We ran them through their as-is state, and then the next morning, we ran them through their to-be state. And in the afternoons of those days, we talked a little bit about the analytics operating models that they want to have, sharing stories from Kroger and other great Edelman nominees. So the reason why I say that and say ignore me and go there is I hope you see this as a great toolkit you can put in your pocket. The Certified Analytics Professional is one of those services that Informs has given you and lean forward on with Scott Nestler so that you can be more standardized in your approach to analytics. And now the Analytics Maturity Model is the other service that Informs has given you so that we can all be standardized in how we talk about analytics and how we wish to deliver it. So I hope that excites you, and if I see you looking down at your screens, I'm not going to be offended. Next slide. So this is what I'll do in the next 15 minutes, and I really want to open it up for your questions. Give you a little bit of background as to where the Analytics Maturity Model has been and where it's going. Give you an overview of it. We can talk about the development. If anyone has questions on security and testing, I have some backup slides that we can go to as well. And then like I said, we'll focus on your questions and see where we go from there. So next slide, please. So the 2015 committee consists of all these folks that are gunking up our screen. Great amount of friends and colleagues from Informs. They are all members, and as you look at it, you can see that it represents a wonderful cross-section of industry and academia. So we have folks from the DoD, like myself, as well as representing Accenture Commercial. You have folks from other consultancies, like Norm Ryder, who was the previous chair. You have folks from UMass Amherst, University of Maryland, Loras College, Henry Jackson Foundation for the Advancement of Military Sciences. A good cross-section of individuals. The folks that you see underlined are the folks that were part of the Originate Committee. So the Analytics Maturity Model began back in about really 2011, 2012. And these are the folks that helped formulate it, structure it, and you can see that some of the folks like Ann Robinson, who was past president of Informs, have transitioned to other roles where there are executive steering group. And they function exactly as you would think an executive steering group was. All these guys over here, like myself, have these great ideas, and we seek the executive committee's steering group's permission to implement them before we do make a change to the model or go live with a new feature or function. Any questions on the committee? We are looking for new active members. One of the things that I would like to do over the next year and a half is extend the outreach we have to the international community. So John Poplars represents a great asset, former Edelman laureate out in the Europes. Would love to bring on more folks from Canada and likewise. So if you're interested in joining the committee, please visit with me afterwards. It does come with an expectation of joining a call and actually doing some yeoman's work on a monthly basis, but it is none too taxing, and it's been a wonderful, edifying experience for me. And like I said, it's even translated to great skills in my day job. Next slide. So background, 2011 is when we began formulating it. Norm Ryder and myself, 2013 is when all of those thoughts made it to an Excel spreadsheet. And it was running on these Excel spreadsheets, big 11 by 17s, and even posters that we'd walk around and have people move their Post-it notes to complete the assessment. And then we took it to the annual meeting in 2013 and got the feedback on the way in which we broke up the analytics maturity model. Originally, there were 4 themes, and I'll show those to you, and they got consolidated down to 3. So we really are, this is a living model that we are seeking your validation on. This isn't ours or the committee's model, this is Informs' model. This is your model. And so in as much as you have any tweaks or hard issues with it, you need to verbalize it, or even become part of the team, so that we can make it the international standard. And so that's what we did in 2013. In 2014, we then went live with some beta testing. We had some release codes. We took it to the Washington, D.C. chapter, the Maryland chapter, the Colorado Springs chapter, and had these folks beta test it, as well as folks out there associated with Ortec, John Poplars, and my group. After that beta online testing, we then had a soft launch, and that soft launch coincided with the big data conference in San Jose last year. We went and presented it, had a great conference, a lot of great positive feedback, and then it coincided with a hard launch at the last annual meeting. That hard launch was very successful, and although it says 300 participants up there, those are participants like that I've gone in front of and seen and trained personally. We have many hundreds of users who have gone there and created their first profiles and completed their assessments. March of this year, we finally got the board to approve our new committee, and June is where we are today. At the end of this year, before the next annual meeting, we will have the very first industry benchmarks, the state of the analytics report for Informs to publish, and this is where we're going with this. And I'll allude to that in some future slides. So that's a little bit about where we've been and where we are today with that star. Next slide, please. So what is this Informs Analytics Maturity Model? Now, I will guarantee you one thing. It will have a new name by the end of the year. The international standard for analytics, or we're toying with a few things in the marketing division. But it is meant to be the international standard for analytics quotient, for analytics scalability, for analytics operations, whatever you want to call it. It is like the CAP certification meant to provide the international standard for what a user, what a corporate, what an academic experience in analytics represents. And you'll see that as I click through some themes with you in just a minute. It's meant to be credible. So it's not just a consultancy's take on what analytics are. It's not just an education institution's take on what analytics are. We are cross-industry, cross-academia, everyone pouring in and saying this is a general rule of thumb for analytics across anyone who might be a practitioner or an educator of analytics. So we believe for that reason it's more credible than some of those models that are out there. Now, we have done our due diligence, and trust me, I have clicked through probably 50 or more of these models, ranging from the Delta model to Accenture's own model, IBM's model, FICO's, You name it, we've gone through it. As a matter of fact, Adobe has a really beautiful one that's out there. But again, ours is differentiated because it stands on the shoulders of the great professionals that characterize the members of Informs, and it's a living model. It is free, so we don't say take this assessment and say yes or no to a series of questions. You'll see that that we are using a different kind of scale. We're using a differential scale, and at the end of your assessment, we then turn you on to resources you can take advantage of, and we do all this for free. We don't say complete your assessment. To get your score, contact one of our associates, contact one of our consultants, and sign up for the service. It is not like that. It is free access to whether you're an Informs member or not. And then it's monitored. So the security and the testing is all in place, but as well as the development. Like I said, it is a living model. So the model that you see today is not the same model that you're going to see in 2 years. Based on the feedback, based on the data that we mine, we will mature and evolve the model to represent what analytics are in 2015, 2017, 2020. My goal is that when I'm retiring, I don't know, in 2030, 2040, I look back and I see the Informs International Standard for Analytics still living, still breathing, but very different from what Norm, myself, and these committees originally stood it up to be. Next slide. So you'll see that it provides an assessment that identifies your current levels of maturity. It also provides you with aspirational targets, basing you off of what are the industry benchmarks. So this is a feature that we're bringing in come this annual conference. If, like you saw me select earlier on, law enforcement, if I were to take the analytics maturity model and I were to look at my people score, I would see that perhaps I'm lagging where most in law enforcement are entering their scores. Both a subject matter expert benchmark that steps back and says, this is where I see the state of law enforcement, as well as one that's based on the data. And so those features are being turned on as we capture more and more respondents. Incremental goals, so we don't say, hey, this is your score, good luck. We really help the user go through and say, what is your SMART goal? How can you define a specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound goal? And how are you going to do that in the next 30 days or in the next year? And as you'll see in the quick demo that we have here, is if you're already clicking through, it asks you to enter a target date for completing that. Whether it's in 30 days or in 3 months, it's going to send you a little email and say, have you completed that? So in some ways, it's also a coach. It's helping remind you to take the steps you need to towards analytics maturity. Action plans. So it also says when you're at a stupor of thought and you don't know what you got to do next, it shows what other leaders in industry have done to take themselves out from a level 3 to a level 5. And then we are working to bring into it as well as some context for you to show that if you were to go buy that software that improves your analytics maturity, what is the return on investment for that $80,000 so what? Next slide. So this is the assessment. This is how we look at it. Like I said, there are now 3 themes, and there are 4 questions underneath every single one of those themes. I'm not going to read those questions aloud for you. This is where I'm going to require you to go back in the Informs model online and see those questions for yourself. But we have questions associated with organization, leadership, people, measures, and business processes. Analytics capabilities, your framework, roles and skills, services and processes, and then your data and infrastructure, health, access, traceability, and architecture. Let me pause on this real quick and get your feedback on these themes and on these questions. Do you think that there's a misnomer, or is there something missing from that? It's been a really neat process of developing those themes and developing the questions, because it's boiled down from a lot of people's perceptions as to what analytics are. And we were able to find those common themes and distill them down to these 12. Well, let's go to the next slide, because it'll be a little bit illustrative. Actually, let's go forward one more, and then we'll come back. Here we go. So this is an example of a question that you would have said. So it would have asked you a series of questions with regard to leadership. And then it would have asked you to set a goal. Again, achieving the incremental aim that you have to mature yourself. You set the target date, and then based on the score that you had entered in originally, you would have said, I'm a score 2. And it tells you along this scale, along this semantic differential scale, what constitutes a score 1, 2, 3, and 4. Where's that threshold for going to a 5 and 6? Where's that threshold for going to a 6, 7, and 8? So based on the information that you would have read, you would have entered yourself as a 2, and you just said that your aspiration was to get to a 5. And then this is what you were going to do by that date to get there. The reason why we collect all this data for you is we help you go through as to why were you where you were, where are you going and why do you want to get there, and then how are you going to do it and when can you do it by. When all this is done and gone through, you hit PDF, and that's what you walk up to your CEO. That's what I walked up to my 3-star general when I was in the Pentagon, and that's what I walked up to my client there in Toronto saying, this is how we mature ourselves over the next several years. And for them, it had a $750 million, so what? So obviously this was foundational to how they moved themselves forward, and I'm very proud to say that they are taking some of the actions based on this original assessment, as is the Pentagon, as is the Army, and as is the Brazilian Stock Exchange, and as are many institutions that have implemented this, and I think you can help us implement it more. Let's go back a slide, and I need to wrap up in the next 5 minutes to allow for questions. You can see that as you have entered in your scores, it's going to give you some summary statistics. Now, I acknowledge that some of the visual reporting isn't the greatest thing since sliced bread. Our IT team has done a magnificent job of ensuring that security and testing and that data entry capture is all there. And one of the things that they are working on next is improving the visualization of the data. But a bullet chart is a bullet chart, and that's what you see over here to the right. And so the black area represents those were your as-are scores, and the blue bullet in the middle represents your 2B. So you can see that this group, when they looked at themselves, they said, well, and in terms of the 4 questions I had with regard to my organization, people, leadership, measures, and processes, that my people, the questions that I answered, brought me to a 5, and I really think I can get to a 9 or 10. What's interesting is when I ran it with another client, they came back in the first, I would say, unsupervised score that I put out there, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10. And I said, that's fantastic. I understand that you guys want to get to a 10, but are any of those smart, specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound? And then they were able to back themselves off from being a 10 to say, all right, I think in the next 3 months or the next year we can get to a 6, 7, and 8. And so then this becomes a feasible plan that they came up with. So you can see that this assessment is a little bit old, taken back on 2014. Any questions on what you're seeing here? Yes, ma'am.
I think I sort of missed the analytics part. Like, is it buried in the questions?
Yes. Yeah. So the questions I'm not reviewing with you right now. Let me go ahead and, if we turn our phones, or if you open up the assessment that you had, let's go to the very first question. And you'll see that as you manipulate it, it looks a lot like TurboTax. That was my intent when I gave it to the folks. So let's go to the question of analytics capability. The very first question is with regard to analytics framework. Is decision-making documented, defining the connections between defined decisions, tools, services, data, and value outcomes? On the beginning section of the scale, you'll have decisions are documented in several units. Analytics governance is fragmented or does not exist. So that would characterize a score of 1, 2, or 3. To cross that threshold and move to a 4, 5, 6, or 7, it says for a developing score, analytics governance exists and is being used on an ad hoc basis, which is where we find a lot of folks today, maybe on the 4 side. Moving towards advanced, which would be a company like a UPS, a GE. Full analytic governance used routinely and creates value. So you'll see that these are really semantic differential based questions. And these are qualitative assessments that get turned into quantitative data as we capture more and more information across multiple users and then show general trends across the community. Make sense? Okay. Next slide. Okay, next slide. So at the end of the report, you get your score. So what? What does that mean? It means that Informs is going to proffer to you ways in which you can get better. It's going to open up its medicine cabinet and say, go look at these. So what you're seeing here is ways in which the model vectors folks back to services that Informs provides. So really suggested for any maturity level, and you'll see that it provides links based on scores to say, hey, in terms of your organization, you were lacking your maturity. We recommend you look at our consultants database, or you attend the analytics meeting. For folks who are looking to really mature their analytics capability and might be advanced, it's going to say, our continuing education program is going to be really great for you to install in your programs. This is where a lot of institutions have now hired their big data engineers or their analytics professionals. Now what do they do with them? how do they continue to incentivize them? How do they continue to cultivate and mature that workforce? And the continuing education resources that Informs provides is a great way that they can get that at a lower cost than where they might find elsewhere. And of course, journals, where they can continue to read what some of the best innovations and new thought are that Informs captures on its pages. Next slide. I'll wrap up with these next two. So the development and integration tasks are in progress. You'll see that we are communicating. Me being here is part of this member engagement that we want to do. Communicate content and solicit feedback. I solicit your feedback, especially after you run through the model, either alone or with a client. Capture in the comment section or email any one of us committee members directly. I'll have my business cards here at the end. You're welcome to engage us directly and tell us where we missed the mark and where we need to improve. And then identify the next phase of improvements. We're going to have a new release of the model with improved visualizations and perhaps a couple new features by late December. Like I said, this is going to be a model that gets updated every year or so. Next slide. And in conclusion, having an analytics maturity model allows Informs to step out and distinguish itself from a lot of the noise that is out there, saying that we are a professional, volunteer-based organization that is eschewing what it takes to have true analytics maturity. Moreover, we've captured that and distilled that in a model that is free and connects you back with a lot of the other great and economic services that Informs provides. And it's going to be dynamic. One of the things that I am most excited about is that in Philadelphia at the annual conference, we're going to have in the hands of the Informs president the very first State of Analytics report. And whether that goes across and has the bang of the State of the Union address or not, she'll be able to report on how are we doing in law enforcement, how do we look in terms of government, how does retail compare with healthcare. And that will be an interesting benchmark for all of us to see and read this year and future years as those reports are updated based on the assessments that come through our doors. So I'll pause there. We have a little bit of time left over, and I really want to take your time, take the remaining time to answer any questions or concerns that you have. If you don't have any questions for me, I have some questions for you.
There's a threat. I'm just wondering, how many organizations have tapped into this resource so far?
Yeah.
Ballpark.
Ballpark, I would say credentialed. So there's another interesting aspect that I'll get to in just a second. But I would say number of, I would say, let's just say very, very thorough assessments. It's in the ballpark of 60 to 70 thorough assessments have been completed. So that brings up an interesting point: is what is a thorough or credentialed assessment versus someone who's just going through their phone and entering up some score that might murk up the data. That is one of the initiatives that we also have afoot with one of the subcommittees, is developing a, I got to be careful with the term, certification, a training program that will offer at CORES and at Informs Annual and Informs Analytics meeting, where you can come in, you'll take a course, and you'll become a, again, I hate to say the word certified, or we can just say credentialed, analytics maturity model practitioner. So that when you enter a score and we see that Fred, who's got his shiny sticker from taking the course, when he enters a score, that one carries more weight, or perhaps goes into a bin all of itself compared with all the other ones that come through the door. So that person has received some training how to exercise the model and what these terms and definitions mean, because there certainly is a taxonomy and list of references that we have available as well. You're probably wondering, is that out there? Yes, there's a user's guide. So a lot for you to go and see and poke through online. Yes, ma'am.
Is there a,
Sorry, let me ask, did I answer your question?
I did. Can I ask a follow-up before you go on?
We got time.
Yeah, just for that international environment, Sylvie pointed out that different countries have different perspectives on some of these things. Have you run your user guide and that through different groups so that you can make sure that they'll understand that taxonomy, or will that be part of your
That's a great point. No, that is part of my certification process, and that's part of our aim for this coming year. You know, really stretching forth the stakes that we have as to what constitutes the committee. So, great point, and that's only something that I can accomplish with more folks other than John Poplar's coordinating and helping us with on this. So that's a recruiting pitch. Yes, ma'am.
I'm just curious, is it possible to do a test run, like without marking up your data as it was, like?
Absolutely, yeah. So if you wanted to do that, I would log in as a guest. You saw that when you go to the first screen. On the far right, there says take this as a guest, and you can go all the way through. When you create a profile, and there's TurboTax, you'll see that says if you want full access, it gives you two different ways to take the test, just like TurboTax does. It'll create a profile and it'll collect the data on you. but we don't disclose any of that information. That's obviously useful for our benchmarking, but when you take it as a guess, it's just kind of very vanilla, and you can run all the way through it and see what your scores are. Yes, sir?
Is this something that if you were using to assess an organization, you'd be going at multiple levels within the organization and it would aggregate it?
That's a great question, and that is a feature that we're turning on. We need to be very explicit with in the future on our webpage. We've had that request. The folks have said, well, I want, as a CIO, to take this assessment. Or the CIO says, I want to farm out 10 of these assessments to my sub-activities and have them take assessment. And then I've had other folks that says, I want to give it to 50 people across the organization and have it. So there's kind of 3 or 4 or 5 even different ways in which this can be administered. And the answer is yes, we plan to introduce that kind of drop-down, if you will, corporate management functionality to the next release, again, around December timeframe. And then second answer is, well, does it only work at the CIO level? Does it only work at the individual level? When writing this, we took great care and caution to make sure it was scalar, and it didn't matter which entity you were performing the assessment with. And so I can tell you from personal experience, I've done it with a CIO and I've done it with a yeoman in analytics. So I would say it works up and down the food chain. Another question. Let me ask you, who in this room has taken an analytics assessment, whether it was Adobe's, the Delta, the IQ, the AQ? Raise your hand if you don't mind. Okay, great. And which one was that?
AQ.
The AQ, the analytics quotient, so IBM? Okay, great. Me too. I took it and 1,000 other ones.
Well, I just ran through the analytics maturity model with the petrochemical company I work through inside out.
Okay.
Inside out.
Provide you any insights?
Yes, but there's still tough challenges to get those benchmarks. You know, yes, insights.
Insights. Yeah, all models are wrong, some are useful.
Yeah.
I know this model is wrong. I hope it's useful, and that's the ultimate aim of the analytics maturity model. So I'm proud of where we've been. In 2013 and 2011, it was a bunch of thoughts. 2013, it turned to a spreadsheet. Now it's actually an online thing. And 2015, 2016, we'll have our first reports reporting on analytics and the state of it throughout industries. I hope you all can be part of those participants, some of those practitioners, as well as some of the community that provides us feedback, if not part of the committee. So thank you very much for coming out, and I appreciate your questions and listening.